Joining me for more, Fox News contributor and former leader of the Brexit campaign, Mr. Nigel Farage. Nigel, good to see you.
Thank you.
What do you think?
Well, I've seen the same thing here with Brexit. The same argument. We didn't want uncontrolled open borders. We wanted proper control, the right people to come to our country. And yet, just as your president has been, as one of the Brexit leaders, I was painted out as being against everybody that was a migrant. So the similar arguments. But here's the real problem. That social media, through all its various forms, is now a vital part of communications and people deciding, making their own minds up, forming their own thoughts in a modern society. Now, if absolutely everybody in that room in Google thinks the same way, that of course influences the way they as a company operate. And there is now absolutely conclusive proof, numerical proof, that over the course of the last, say, 18 months, those with conservative views get far worse results on searches, get far lower reach on Facebook and other sites like that. There is a deliberate anti-conservative bias going on. I confronted Mark Zuckerberg about this in the European Parliament just a few months ago. And frankly, we've now reached the point where something has to be done. I'm not normally the kind of person that calls for legislation. I generally believe in free markets, but I do think the absolute minimum that we need here is a Bill of Rights for social media to make sure that all reasonable opinions get a fair play on every form of social media.
It's an interesting idea, Nigel. I mean, one of the things that bugs me is that these so-called academics and sophisticated types, they should welcome a diversity of opinion. They should welcome many points of view. And yet, I think there was a study out today in the Daily Mail about there are more members of the gay community and transgender community at Yale than there are conservatives in the incoming class. I mean, I'm sorry, the last time I checked, half of America was conservative and half was liberal. But that's not represented, whether it be at the elite college institutions or the likes of Google or Facebook or Hollywood. How come?
Yeah, well, I mean, academia used to be about teaching young people something called critical thinking, where you teach them, here's a problem, here are two alternatives, you make your mind up as a grown-up, which is the right approach. Right. Now, through the whole system, through college and university, right across the Western world, young people are increasingly being taught, here's a problem, here's one solution, which is good and virtuous, here's another one, which is evil and bad. And we are not teaching young people critical thinking, and that is playing straight through to the kind of people that work in social media, and we cannot stand idly by with that. Certainly, when it comes to the funding of universities, I would say, unless they can prove that young people are being taught fairly about all subjects, no more money should come from any form of government to them. That's
a good idea too, Nigel. I mean, it seems counterproductive if you're in an academic institution where you're supposed to, be able to have a free exchange of ideas, but yet to say everybody has to think like us. And if you dare to put up a Trump for president sign that's somehow considered hate speech, and we had many universities that did deem it hate speech and would demand these signs come down, then you are not in touch with how a lot of people feel right now. Nigel, just one last point before I let you go. It bugs me when people try and paint conservatives now as racist or sexist or xenophobic. It really bugs me. It also really bugs me when people try and compare, say, this administration to Adolf Hitler. I think it's disrespectful to history. It's disrespectful to what has happened. I mean, all of this, it feels as though people are just launching these verbal grenades and they are forgetting, Nigel, how damaging that is.
Yeah, it's damaging not just to public discourse, but actually it's beginning to damage people's trust and belief and faith in the whole democratic process. Unless we can conduct democracy within, passionate certainly, but within reasonable confines, we will finish up actually putting people off engaging with this process. So the whole democratic system, faith and trust in it, belief in it, is actually at stake. And there are many on the left who, it would appear to me, don't actually believe in democracy. They now believe in their political views in an increasingly secular world. That is their religion, and nothing else is acceptable. And that's why all of us you know, whether we live in Middle America or Middle England. You know, we have to stand up at elections and make sure our men and women get elected. We have to turn out. Otherwise, I'm afraid this new, very dangerous wave of thinking is going to prevail.